George Galloway, with some politicians, they're quite open about it. Their school days were not that important to them. They've moved on and so on. I get the impression with you they were very important. I mean, in one of your books, you acknowledge a number of teachers as being very important to you, and you name them.
Yes.
Important times for you.
Very. I mean, I do have my regrets that I didn't pay attention enough in school, but nonetheless, school was very important to me. It was very important to me in developing a vocabulary, for example. I mean, one of the things I'm known for is slightly archaic sometimes, but interesting use of language. And that came directly from my English teacher, Mr. Bennett. That's the way he used to talk.
Well, what do you mean by interesting use of language?
Well, you know, I come up with words like popinjay and vituperative and words that are not often used, and sometimes journalists arch their eyebrows as if to say, what does that word mean? And they're often university educated in the way that I'm not. And I suppose I learned from my English teacher the tremendous treasure trove that the English language is, and that because a word was more often used 50 years ago or 100 years ago, it's not a reason for not using it now. But it started in my primary school, really, and Miss Littlejohn was my favourite teacher of all.
Why?
And, she encouraged people to think, to express themselves. And that was quite important for me because I was quite a rough and tough boy. And the last thing in the world I would have wanted to be known as was what we used to call a swot. Or I think boffin was a word later used for the same kind of boy. And so here was the teacher encouraging me, who was more often than not found running wild on the streets, to write, to value writing, to express yourself in writing, that the pen was mightier than the sword. And that was a lesson that she taught me that I never forgot.
You were one of those who've gone onto this famous Friends Reunited site, and it's quite interesting what you say. You say, you may have seen some of the work I've been doing over the years. I'm keen, for reasons I'm not altogether clear about, to contact friends or foes from the school.
Yes.
A couple of things from that. Why are you not altogether clear? Well, you obviously think about the past, but you're not quite sure why it fascinates you.
I think it's partly about one's own ever-dawning realization of one's own mortality, isn't it? That we're closer to death now than we are to our school days, and inevitably one's mind drifts back to paths not taken, paths taken, and those that you took them with or parted from.
You mentioned friends or foes.
Yes.
Did you make quite a few enemies?
I kind of did, yeah. I was inordinately proud of being known as the best fighter in the school, which is nothing at all worth being proud of.
Right.
You know, I had been a boxer in my earlier days, and I'm afraid I boxed more out of the ring than I did inside it. And I don't, you know, I'm not entirely sure what that was about. That's one of the things I mean when I make that enigmatic comment.
Yeah.
Because if I were to meet someone now that I'd punched, or that peculiarly Scottish form of assault, butted, I'm not quite sure what I'd say to them except sorry.
Yeah, or what they might say to you. Indeed. After all these years.
Indeed.
Did you enjoy being notorious at the school? In some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I was notorious amongst a class of teachers, right. And I was involved in lots of rough and tumble, but I was quite popular at school.
Yeah. Did that secondary school, you clearly had a lot of time for debate of all kinds there. Was it during that period that you became, politics is partly about being a performer. You are well known as a speaker, an orator. Did you learn those skills? You mentioned earlier the writing skills and valuing words. Did they teach you to become a performer?
No, we didn't have a debating society or anything like that at our school. I kind of wish we had. If I were running a school, I'd certainly encourage one.
Yeah.
I didn't do drama, though I've been in many a drama since. So no, but I was born into a very political household. My parents were one or the other would always be going out in the evening to a trade union meeting or a Labour Party meeting. They were highly political people, so politics was in my bloodstream from an early age.
Yeah, and you joined the Labour Party relatively early, didn't you?
I joined at 13, which was 2 years before one was allowed to, but I always looked older than my age. I was proud of that then, I'm not so now.
And I'm going to raise that Big Brother performance, which was a performance of sorts, wasn't it? I mean, school's probably the closest thing to that, where you're in an enclosed space with a group of people not of your choice.
Yes. Yes.
Did it help you prepare for that? And when you were in that house, did that remind you? You obviously think about school a lot of those days.
Well, I don't know. My leadership qualities were more valued at school than they were in the Big Brother house. So I was kind of more popular at school than I was in the Big Brother house. But yeah, you're right. I mean, being locked up with Big Brother, the rector, looking down over the balustrade at whatever you were doing and how much facial hair you were growing. I mean, I had an extraordinary altercation with my headmaster, whom I eventually grew to love and respect, Mr. Hamilton, who told me that I mustn't sport this moustache. I was only 15 after all.
He sounds more tyrannical than Big Brother.
Yes, indeed. That was the first Big Brother I ever met. Yes.
The secondary school you went to was a selective school that became basically comprehensive while you were there.
Yes.
Yeah? So,
kind of. I was on the cusp of it, really. Yeah. I didn't sit in 11 plus, but there was an element of selection in my year. Later it became entirely comprehensive. So it had the ethos of a grammar school, which it had been. I mean, it was all dark wood paneling and very exotic school uniforms, which, in the foolish way that young minds think, were embarrassing. I mean, it was a sort of red, wine-coloured blazer with fancy braid. And I remember my father saying to me, "You'll have to get a cap." And that was one of my first rebellions. There was no way I was going to wear a cap. But it was, you know, the blazer marked us out so that when we went through tough areas to and from school, and I lived in a tough area, you know, people would throw stones at you because you were a Harris snob, was what the slogan of the time was.
So you almost had to become a street fighter to sort of defend yourself.
You had to show people that you were no snob. Take that.
It's interesting because some people who had the same experience as you of sort of a grammar school turning into comprehensive emerged from that convinced that it was the grammar school that was fantastic and comprehensive's a problem. You became an advocate of the comprehensive system, didn't you?
Very much so. I mean, if I take my own example, if I had not been chosen to go to Harris, I would have gone to a school called Logie. And at that school, I'm sure nobody would have been encouraging me to think about Shakespeare or about the English language. Nobody would have been encouraging my writing skills. Nobody would have been encouraging me to think outside the box and more widely. I would have been being prepared for a job in manual labour or at best as a tradesman. It would have been entirely vocational almost. It would have been how to saw wood properly, how to measure it, how to hit metal with a hammer or burn it with a torch. I think they would have not been right for me. And in that sense, I would have been deliberately been sent down a path which wouldn't have been the right path for me. And all because somebody decided when I was 11 that that's the direction I should travel, that I wasn't, quote unquote, intelligent enough to go and learn about Shakespeare and about history and so on. So I think that selection at any time is unfair, and selection at such a tender age is absurd. And if that had happened, I'd been probably a joiner in the direct works department in Dundee now. You'd never have heard of me. Maybe Mr. Blair wishes that's what happened.
Wish you'd gone to the other school.
Yeah.
Was it, you mentioned earlier it was that your parents that got you into politics, and you taught Labour Party politics a lot, and you joined before you were meant to and so on. But at school, did you engage with, there wasn't a debate side, she said, but Labour Party politics with other kids? You obviously challenged some teachers. What was that?
I did. In fact, I went on my very first demonstration in second year at school at the age of 14, the famous, iconic demonstration in London at Grosvenor Square outside the US Embassy against the American invasion and occupation of Vietnam. And I kind of never looked back from that. I got the taste for mass politics, for politics of action, not just talking, politics of anti-imperialism, and of course in school I talked about all these things.
Yeah.
There were other boys who were on that demonstration from my school, and I talked to teachers about it. I talked to anyone I could.
Now, obviously, you got immersed in all these different parts of your school life, but it wasn't all about politics and challenging teachers and being inspired by teachers. I mean, unusually, I think you met your first wife at school.
I did, yes. She was older than me. I was 15. She was 17. And that was quite a young age to start going steady, as it were, and we were together for many years. So that would be from the very early 70s until 1987. We were together. And I made lots of friends there. I mean, one of the main memories I have about school is laughing so much. I used to laugh till my stomach hurt with laughing. I had such funny friends. And we had our own language, we had our own sign language. We had a bond of deep friendship. It was a real band of brothers. I suppose these are the brothers I was reaching out to through the Friends Reunited scheme.
And do you think just school uniquely produces those circumstances, or your one did, or that, you know, life after that could be pretty harsh and there isn't as much time for such laughter?
Partly that's why it should be valued so, and should be treasured and should be exploited to the ultimate. These truly are the best days of your life. You'll make friends and you'll have experiences and you'll learn things if you use school properly that will be of really value, really lasting value until the end of your life.
In the acknowledgement to the book, one of your books which I referred to earlier, you don't only mention teachers, you mention school friends as well. And you acknowledged one, I think, as someone who's opened books to you.
And he's now an author with Penguin, as I am. It's remarkable. Two of us from the same school. He was in either the year or 2 years above me. His name is Bill Duncan. I noticed that at school, he always had books in his hand. He always had books under his arm. And this caught my attention because I say I was a rough boy, and you know, if I'd been going around with the books, I'd have been afraid of people thinking I was a wimp. And this boy wasn't a wimp. He was a strong, macho boy who was carrying books. And I got to talk to him about those books. And he gave me these books, seriatim, and I read them, and wow, had a real big impression on me. Yeah.
Okay, with George Galloway, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.